Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan. It's the first, I guess, Adam, official non-seasonal or off-seasonal Inside the Birds podcast of the 2021 season. We're not really going to go pick apart the last game and do a whole film study on how the Eagles managed to tank against Washington and then somehow turn that into a controversy in itself. We will get into that a little bit because there is some reaction to that, Adam.
Oh yeah.
There's obviously news in that, we'll get into the meeting that takes place between Jeffrey Lurie, Doug Pederson, Howie Roseman. We're recording this on Tuesday night. We know that the meeting has taken place on Tuesday. We don't know if it's over yet. There's
it could last. I mean, it's not like, okay, they're gonna have a meeting, they're not going to talk again. They're going to be talked out through the week, and we'll get into what we believe from what we're hearing is supposed to be discussed. And
right.
Look, so much has happened since this game. I thought for sure, I mean, I'm a little bit naive sometimes. I thought the Sudfeld coming in the fourth quarter would not be a big deal. Obviously on social media it was on Sunday night, but I had no idea what I was walking into with these interviews I did this week. I know you've talked to people, I've talked to people. People are embarrassed around the league. It just became a bigger story than I thought. I really didn't want to have to deal with this week, but it's a big story, and I underestimated how much people are pissed off about it. Not Eagle fans, though, of course.
Right. No, it is polarizing, though, and
yes.
I think a good example of that is the latest Tales from the Blindside, which is out on our Inside the Birds podcast platforms and YouTube channel, and it's got Trey Thomas, Todd Hermans, and Jamal Jackson, and spoiling it, they weren't all on the same page about it. A couple of guys thought it was a little bit difficult to watch because I don't think any of those guys were in that position when they were on an Andy Reid team where they were giving away a game like that.
Well, but here my question for those guys, and I'll certainly listen to the show.
Mm-hmm.
If they would have pulled Hurts out at halftime, maybe let's say it was the plan to give each quarterback a half. Though the game was obviously tight at halftime. Yes, people say, oh, they're tanking it. Well, wait a minute. When you're out of the playoffs, it's about evaluation mode. Though I'm going to get into in a couple minutes here why I think we got to be careful with saying that, because it's not quite like it seems. But to the outsiders, that's what one personnel guy said to me. He goes, well, what if they were just trying to evaluate the quarterbacks for next season? I'm like, they were, but my problem is Nate Sudfeld is highly unlikely to be with the team next season. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely agree with that.
So what's there to evaluate here?
I don't know. I don't. Yeah, I think the Eagles, if they're guilty of anything, it's and I think Les Bowen tweeted this, and I think I probably agree with it. I think that they felt most people already could understand the fact that there were so many players that they weren't playing who probably could have played. So the game started off like a lot of games, week 17, where teams are either out of it or resting, where you just don't have all of your starters in. That part isn't controversial. The fact that they were in the game, though, Adam, and then made these radical changes, like at the quarterback position, stuck out because it then made it look like you went an extra mile to try to lose instead of just not putting your best foot forward. Now, some people will say that's just semantics, and I don't argue with them. You're right. They could be right. Other people say that screws with the integrity of the game. I don't know. I didn't play the game, so I can't really talk about the integrity of the game. I can tell you, since we're talking about it, we'll get into it. We know that there's a report out there. There's a report out there that a couple of guys really went after Doug on this because they were upset. Okay. All I know is I spoke to one player who played in the game. Okay. He told me he was not mad. He told me, I asked him if he saw anything aggressive toward Doug, and he said, if that happened, you'd have to show it to me, meaning he didn't see it. And I asked him if he, the sentiment of the team is that they're really mad, and he told me he didn't think it was. Now, he's just one guy. There's a lot of guys out there. You heard Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders clearly wasn't happy about it. That's fine.
Yeah.
I just question, did Doug and the team do a good enough job of explaining to everybody what was going on? Because that's where I think the team fell short, right? They're going to get criticized by national media no matter what. But what's more important is behind closed doors, is everybody on the same page?
Clearly, the communication was not good enough. I understand coaches have told me over the years, hey, we don't want our quarterbacks worrying about whether they're going to be pulled or not. When it's like a preseason game, we all know that in the fourth preseason game, if a starter's starting, he ain't going to be in there very long.
Mm-hmm.
But more often than not, they don't let him know that. They know they're going to be pulled, but they don't want them thinking out there.
Right.
So I do wonder, fast forwarding here, I do wonder if Hurts, because I heard Hurts's comments after the game. I don't know if he totally knew that Sudfeld was coming in. It sounded like he knew that it was a possibility.
Right.
But I don't know, because you said you didn't play, I didn't play. So I don't know, being not in a coach's shoes, I'm not totally sure. I've asked before what these conversations are like. But it's clear to me that a lot of the players knew that this is a possibility. And by the way, you reported on our Sunday morning show, our pregame show, you had heard that Sudfeld would be active.
I did.
And when you
I
said
actually
that,
heard. I think I even reported. I heard he. There's a chance that he would get into the game.
Oh, okay.
All right. But like I said, I think, and Les tweeted this. So this is how I think the Eagles themselves. I'm guessing here, based educated guess, right? I'm thinking they felt with their lineup that they were not going to be in this game. That it was going to be very tough for them to be in this game without all of those key players. But they were in the game. So when they did everything that they were probably going to do anyway, it looked worse because they actually had a chance to win. I really don't think, if you shot up Doug Pederson with true serum before the game and said, do you think you're really going to beat this team with all of these guys out, especially on the defensive line and even on offense?
Sure.
No, I mean, Washington was getting healthy. They had McLaurin, they had Alex Smith back, and they had Gibson back. And that should have been enough for Washington. Washington played terribly. They really should. They were up 10-0 in that game. They should have been able to put them out.
Although one thing we didn't talk about in our postgame show was that D-line, and I know it was Schwartz's last game, so maybe he just decided to do it, and he knew because it was secondary, he probably had to do it. But their D-line dominated for a while. The guys are out there. They blitzed. Guys who you would think could play in this league were flashing a little bit. So when the game's close, I'm thinking, I thought that maybe and I agree with what this one guy said. If you're going to do this, you're going to do it at halftime, because it's like a preseason game. To the Eagles, it doesn't mean anything because they're out of the playoff race and they're evaluating.
Right.
But it brings me back to the original point here. Sudfeld's not going to be with the team almost certainly next season. And then Doug says after the game, either that or Monday morning, his Monday press conference, I thought this was comical. And I know he just was defending himself. He didn't really think it through. He's like, well, look, we only had we didn't score in the third quarter. Whatever he talked about how they hadn't scored.
Yeah.
He was trying to actually win the game to bring Sudfeld in. I mean, listen, I know Hurts didn't play well, but he did score 2 on the ground, 2 rushing touchdowns. So come on, man, the game was close. He just contradicted himself.
It really did look bad, by the way. I mean,
the messaging was poor by Doug to his players, by the way. Clearly, as you said, the players got mixed messages. Some guys kind of thought Sudfeld was playing. Some weren't sure. The whole thing was a train wreck. Once again, the messaging needs to be better. Doug's got to communicate to his players better. And to me, again, it was like it's clearly was an issue.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, I think what most fans will be happy with is the fact that the Eagles have the 6th overall pick in the NFL draft. That's a pretty good spot. Somebody made a joke. I think it was Mike Kay, who covers the team. Wouldn't it be funny if the Eagles ended up trading back to 9 after all is said and done?
Oh, my God. No, it's interesting. It's so early, Geoff. We don't have the underclassmen list. A lot of our shows coming up are going to be disseminating what moves they've made, what we're hearing about schematics and so forth. And then we get into free agency, then the draft. But once we get the underclassmen list, I definitely will have early intel on our show here. I'll get on that. But I'm not going to speculate until I want the list out. Because a lot of some guys are hedging whether they're going to come out or not, whether they're going to declare or not. So once we get it, a full list, we'll have it for him. We'll get the super early word on that. And by the way, Greg Cosell has already started to dig into the college prospects, folks. He's going to be part of our team this season. This offseason. We're looking forward to it, and everybody loves Greg's stuff, so we're glad to have him aboard. Definitely love to hear that. One thing I want to mention about the draft, which I find very comical, is that there are already a lot of mock drafts out. And you would think that if you're a mock drafter, that you would at least try to understand the tendencies of the teams that you're mocking, right? There's at least 3 or 4 mock drafts that have the Eagles taking
Micah Parson at 6th overall. He's the middle linebacker at Penn State, and he opted out this year. He's a total beast. You know, I'm a big Penn State
Great
guy.
player,
So
but it ain't happening.
great player. He'd be a fantastic fit for the team. But when in the Eagles' history have you known them to take a middle linebacker with a top 10, with a first round pick, forget a top 10 pick, they're going to take either a lineman, a pass rusher, an offensive lineman, maybe a corner. I mean, you can or maybe a wide receiver, but if you watch the Eagles at all for 15
D-line,
years,
O-line, right? D-line, O-line, receiver, right? No way in hell.
No, they're not taking a linebacker. Come on,
Not
people's got to do better when they do their mock draft.
Listen, wait. When you say mock draft, were they people who cover the Eagles or were they draft people who do?
I don't remember exactly. Some were more like they're more like draft analysts. They're not Eagles reporters, but still, I mean, it's like, come on already.
That's funny. Right? Okay, I got you.
All right. I do want to take a minute, Adam, now that the season is over, to thank Derek Gunn and Trey Thomas. I thought, Grillin' the Birds was an awesome show that was part of the Inside the Birds platform all season long. I hope everybody really enjoyed it. And also the guys that we mentioned who do Tales from the Blindside, Trey, Jamal Jackson, and Todd Harriman's great shows. Really thank them. I think they brought a lot. The chemistry.
I just want to say that the chemistry between Trey and Derek is awesome.
Yes.
And if you haven't watched Tales of the Blindside, I know, it's funny. I'm removing the spam from our YouTube page every day. It doesn't take long. I don't know how this happened, but they've now updated our ability to remove it. We don't have to hit, reporting spam. We could just hit the button and removes it.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't have to be there for 30 seconds, but man, people love those shows. The storytelling on Tales of the Blindside is legendary. And then I'll tell you what, when they get serious on their opinions, they don't, as you know, Geoff, when you watch that show, a lot of the stuff they don't agree on.
Right.
It's so fascinating to hear their points of view for people who don't agree. It's really interesting.
I agree. And then I know that you and I, when we put Inside the Birds together and started it, and as we've grown, the big thing we've wanted to do is to just try to provide content that you can't get anywhere else. There are a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of websites. There's a lot of shows, but we're hoping to give people different forms of things. Like, you and I, we don't have the stories that Jamal Jackson and Todd Harriman have. We've got some decent ones, but not like them because they're players.
And also Derek and Trey, listen to Derek's. I don't want to give anything away, but you have to hear Derek's every once in a while. He brings stuff up, obviously with Trey, covering the team, and it just, and then their takes on big topics. It's funny because you and I don't get in the weeds like everybody else does. Everybody has a different take, right? But the great part about our group is everybody has a different view. They don't have the same view.
Exactly. And the good thing is that it's different and it's informed. I mean, you're talking about guys who played the game.
Exactly.
Trey breaking down the offensive line has been a fantastic addition to all of our platforms. So really appreciate it.
When Greg Cosell tells me on the side, I cannot believe how much I've learned from Trey Thomas. What else do you need to know?
Exactly. So I just wanted to take this minute to thank all those guys and Greg Cosell, who was a big part of our Sunday.
Thank you all. Yeah, they're awesome.
Absolutely. And then for all of our listeners for their feedback and reaching out and enjoying it too. Thank you. Let's get into a little bit more Eagles stuff. Adam, first we'll stop and tell everybody, like we always do, about PHLSportsNation.com, covering all 4 Philly teams like nobody else and enhancing the fan experience with their coverage. For the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. Check them out on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Let's pause real quick for a word from our other great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. All right. Why don't we get into the press conference a little bit, Adam? We haven't had a chance to weigh in on the press conference that Howie Roseman and Doug Pederson held together on Monday. Now, the first brilliant thing about this press conference, Adam, is that they did a joint press conference. And that was brilliant on Doug's part, or the team's part, because to avoid the disaster of last year, which is Doug having to answer a whole lot of questions that he's not ready to answer at the moment, and then tripping up on himself, and 24 hours later, he looks like a stooge, right? What they do is they have Howie and Doug together, and Howie hasn't spoken to the media in an eternity, right? So that 90% of the questions asked are going to go toward Howie instead of Doug, who's, is not ready to answer some of these things about his staff. And so Howie wound up answering most of the questions. There was one question asked to Doug about his coaching staff, and he was actually smart enough to say everything's in evaluation mode. Like everything he should have said last year, he figured out to say this time. He specifically said, we're in evaluation mode, and that just goes on this week. So that was actually smart of the Eagles this time. As far as getting substance, though, there really wasn't a whole lot of answers there.
Yeah, I mean, some of it was they were being defensive. Some they were being introspective, which I totally understand. When you've had a season like this, it drains you because no one expected this. I could tell you from talking to people privately with the Eagles, this is just they're I would say they're in some sort of pain over it just the whole season. And I'm not just talking about. I'm sure part of it is Wentz's regression and all that, but the regression of the offense. Having such a bad record of 4-11-1, who could have imagined that? Right. 3 straight playoff appearances than this. I mean, like you and I've said, especially myself, I missed totally on this evaluation of this team. I still think it's an 8-8 team if everyone's healthy. But my God, this is not a 4-11 team. Come on, man, this is ridiculous. So someone's got to be responsible for it. And I know that they weren't going to finger point at anybody, but I was hoping. Not that they were blaming it on injuries. I was hoping to learn about, and Howie and Pederson they're not going to go into what they felt that they missed. And that's what I understand they could say it's not the time to talk about that, but I wanted to hear some acknowledgement of, hey, listen, we obviously didn't do a good enough job. And we got to look at that. Maybe some of the words they did, I don't know.
No, but they did exactly what you said. They got like Howie said, yeah, we take note of guys we don't draft and then how they do, right? Yeah. But he then goes back to all the players that they drafted who are good players. Well, that's great, but you have a 4-win team. So how good are those players doing that you drafted if you have a 4-win team? And what about the players you drafted who are not producing at all because they're not even good enough to play for a 4-win team?
I'm not buying. Are injuries a major factor? Of course they are. I'm not a moron. I mean, sometimes I am, but no, honestly, yes, injuries are a factor. And I know Pederson will never own up to the offensive issues that it's his fault. He should, because he's the one who calls the plays, and he's allegedly in control of his staff. Whether he really is or not is another discussion. But the coaches report to him, and I've said this now for 3 years. The part of the reason why this team was so bad is his inability to coach his coaches. Is the roster clearly not good enough? Yes, that's a front office issue. We've outlined that. We've gone over every position on the show, and we're going to do a roster review show. It's one of my favorite things you and I do, where we go deep in the weeds and everything we heard about who's not doing well, who really did well, what they have to do to rebuild this roster to a certain extent.
Right.
But they're in this position of not being in the playoffs because the coaching clearly was not good enough. And
they're also the only, I don't want to say the only team, but I mean, they broke the quarterback somehow. And that has to be.
Yes. He's
not just
broken.
That they were bad. Yes. They were bad for a reason.
Okay. Yeah. And the other part of this media get together, which I am dumbfounded at, and I went through the transcript more than once. I did not see a question. The number one question to me was, "Hey, Doug, are your coaches coming back?"
Oh no, he was asked. He said he's in evaluation, but he skirted it.
It was not really.
You're right. It wasn't direct like that.
I would have said. I would have named the coaches.
Right.
Okay. I would have named the coaches. Everybody knows who's under the microscope here. It's not a secret.
Right. Again, that's part of the genius of this collaborated press conference that's on
Zoom.
Never
was addressed.
Where only 20 questions are going to get asked. So better to have 16 for the Eagles. It was better to have 16 questions for Howie and 4 for Doug than to have them do it separately and 20 for one and 20 for the other.
Right. I would have liked to hear Roseman talk about the draft class, what his view of it. I would have see. I come in. I'm not trying to set people up. When I haven't gone to Eagles press conference in I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
But when I would go, I wanted to learn something. Because I think fans want to learn the same, because we all love football. So tell me, Howie, let's talk about Jalen Reagor. Let's talk about Davion Taylor. I know he got hurt, but what's your plan for him? I want people to listen to our show, Inside the Birds, because they want to learn something.
Right.
If they're not learning something, we're not doing their job. The reporters, I think, by and large, do a nice job when they go to these press conferences. But there's some of so many agendas, people aren't learning anything. It's sometimes it's a waste of time. It's like get get something out of these guys. Ask better questions. This never should have happened. They should have been put to the fire a little bit harder, I thought.
Yeah, and hopefully they will, because they'll still have to. I mean, the owner will have to speak eventually, and Doug will have to speak again. So
I want to know, what did they think of the draft class, and the guys who didn't get it done?
Mm-hmm.
What do they need to do better? What did you see from these guys, positive and negative?
Yeah,
that's what fans want to know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Here's another admission from Howie that I found very strange. All right, he was asked. He made the point to say that, if you remember in the offseason, right, at the combine last year, we talked about this. Howie was very forthcoming about having to turn the roster over and start to move on from the 2017, 18, 19 teams and get younger and rebuild around Carson, and that you can still win doing it, but you got to turn the roster over. And then he said in this press conference that they had that plan and it was a good plan, but they pivoted because of the pandemic. And when he was asked to elaborate, he said there was that little voice inside of his head that saying, you probably should change it like we said, but we think we're in an advantageous position because we're bringing back our coaching staff and all three other teams in the division aren't. But I kept thinking, well, who other than Jason Peters that wasn't re-signed until late in the summer after Dilla got hurt, who did he bring back that he shouldn't have brought back?
No, Vinny had to come back because Vinny
came back for depth. He didn't kill them. He's not hurting them.
No. But I'm not. Yeah, I didn't. No, I mean
Deshaun.
What's that?
Deshaun. I mean, is he talking about?
Well, they were stuck with his. Here's the problem. They were stuck with his contract and Alshon's, obviously.
Exactly. Exactly.
Unless
he was trying to say he should have cut ties with them sooner and taken the cap hit this year, which I think maybe there was a.
Well, that's coming now. Obviously, that's coming by March. That's coming, but you will. Look, the bottom line is with this whole thing, I was expecting more and got less from this press gathering on a Monday.
Right.
I don't know. I look at these things differently. I'm just that way. Whatever. It's not a big deal.
Let me bring this other point up. Howie says he's asked about the scouting staff in general, and he says we are a good group. We have a really good staff. We have really good people in this building, and people that we spend a lot of time trying to recruit to come to Philadelphia and help us. The last two GMs hired in the NFL were from this organization. Talking about, of course, Joe Douglas and Andrew Berry.
Yeah.
He says we've built winning teams before. That's our job to continue to do it, and that's what we'll do here. Let me ask you this, Adam. If you love your building so much and you have good people, which I agree, I think that they have respected people in their scouting department, whether it's a guy like Andy Weidel, right, who took over when Joe Douglas left, all the way down, you go through and you see. Why do you have to bring in, what's his face?
John Dorsey.
Why did you have to bring Scott McLuhan in 2 years ago? How many people?
Well, McLuhan was on the outside. He was just reading his scouting reports, but yeah, I get
that's fine. But what is the point of it? It's like if you're good with your people, why do you keep bringing in more people?
Yeah, and by the way, the owner had nothing to do with John Dorsey. This is totally a Howie thing. He's known John for a while, and he likes speaking to people on the outside. Look, I'll say this much about it. I agree with your assessment, but the one guy that he brought in that was incredible was he's still with the team, Tom Donahoe for the 2016 draft.
Yeah, and he was brought in as an advisor. I have no problem with that. Every team has a
now what happened was because they had not hired a personnel director.
Right.
Joe came in after the 16 draft. Tom set the board. He ran the draft, and Howie followed it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was by far not only was Howie's best draft, one of the best drafts in the last 20 years. It was historic. And obviously, they didn't think Wentz would regress, but you have to ask yourself what's happened since then.
Absolutely.
And that's the issue. The drafts we don't. This is not a draft show, but if you grade them, you and I graded them in the offseason, but not great. 16, phenomenal. 17, we've called it the sins. This is my favorite line: the sins of the 17 draft. Terrible. Yeah. Do they have two starters out of it? Okay. And Nick Gary, I mean, the guy should be starting. He shouldn't have been starting.
Yeah, if it's a starter who's not well, that shouldn't count.
Who's not good. Yeah. And then Derek Barnett's above average. And Derek Barnett's better than average. He's a decent player. He's had a good year, but he's not great.
Right.
It's not a good enough. It's a bad draft. Disappointing draft, to say the least. 19 does not look promising. It's too early for 20. But what fans want to know is, why can't they ace the draft? That's what, looking at our board, our Facebook board, I read that, I don't respond to a lot of the stuff, but I read it and I like to understand what the fans want to know. and it bothers the bleep out of him. Why can't Howie historically has been awesome at free agency. Draft, obviously wildly inconsistent to say the least. Why can't he ace the draft? As you just said, he's got great people working for him. What's the problem?
Well, my interpretation is, and I've said this before, I don't think that they're always on the same page. And I think that as an organization, when you draft, you don't all have to agree. I'm not trying to say, because you're never going to get uniformity. But when the pick is made, everybody's got to be like, okay, we hashed this out. We had our say. And here's how the guy who picks, in this case, Howie Roseman's going forward. All right. And then when you hit on it, you hit on it as a team. When you lose on it, you lose as a team. I don't think the Eagles for a long time have ever always had that feel about them. Okay. And
well, they're real collaborative.
I've said that before.
I know Joe Banner told us on Inside the Birds TV that the big thing that he wanted when he was with Andy Reid and Howie and everyone and the rest of the group was to be really collaborative. And that's really the way, as I understand it, Andy is with the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming they are here, but it's something getting lost in translation. Why? We know about the Metcalf thing was totally medical. Okay, there's nothing they can do about it. You can't overrule your medical staff. Bill Polian told us that. Bill told us. Bill had brought up. I'd asked him this question. I asked him this in an interview. It might have been when we were at ESPN together. He talked about the one guy he wished he would have overruled his medical staff was Rob Gronkowski, because they took him off their board because of his back. And what Bill said is, you know what? We still probably could have. Our medical staff, the docs said he's going to have a short career. Okay, he definitely has had a big injury history. There's no question. It's a fact. And he's missed a lot of time, but you know what? He's still playing.
Right.
And then with Metcalf, there was a neck problem, which may or may not shorten his career. Okay.
Right.
I get it, but there are other players. They gotta ace the draft, because if they ace the draft with the way Roseman's track record, it's pretty solid for free agency. I'm not gonna say he's the best at free agency, but he's right up there. He's pretty good. Yeah. His misses in free agency have not been bad, like really bad.
True.
But why can't they ace the draft? That's something they have to answer. And as you said, their group, Weidel and Patch and Ian Cunningham, and I guess Jeremiah Washburn's involved in it now. Yeah. And all their guys, their scouting staff is really good. There's simply no reason why they shouldn't ace the draft. They're more than capable, but there's just, I don't get it. I don't understand it.
Well, and then now I will say I put this on Jeffrey Lurie to fix it, because you are the one who takes the notes. You are the one who observes what's going on. There has to be something that sticks out that just doesn't feel right when you have guys that are just complete, like a J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who just cannot play in this league. You've got to change that. You've got to fix it. I don't expect you to be 100%, but you can't have guys who just can't play in the second round.
But you got to get the thing with the Arcega-Whiteside pick. We outlined this a year ago. That was heavily analytics influenced. I get that he was a productive college player at Stanford, but you and I gathered a lot of information on the player from other teams. Though there was one team that had a late second, early third. Overall, the feedback we got at the combine, because you and I were traveling together, working together. I mean, the stuff that you and I would hear was clearly not second round.
Right. And we never heard anything close to third round on Davion Taylor. So again,
I don't know. Right. And I don't know. Right. I don't know where I'm assuming their grade was relatively close to that, but even if so, I don't know, man. I'm sorry for making this a draft thing. That was not my intention. It just, you got my blood boiling. So
yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is what people probably have the biggest issue with the Eagles
right now. Is everyone. I mean, I you and I opened this Facebook board, I don't know how long, a year and a half ago, whatever the hell it was.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Everything's a draft. Their fans are up in arms. The Justin Jefferson stuff clearly is part of it for this year. Yeah. But look, this has got to be, okay, let's move on in a second. It's got to be a huge draft for them. They got to ace it.
I agree with you. And by the way, to say, collaboration, they're collaborative. I agree with you. They do have a lot of voices. There's the personnel, there's the coaches that they let get their opinions in, and of course the analytics staff. But at the end of the day, when someone makes a pick, is that from the collaboration, or is someone just making the pick that they were going to make the whole time? That's where I wonder, how collaborative is it really? It can't be called collaboration if at the end of the day a bunch of people are like, where'd that come from? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're not on the same page. So
I don't know. I don't know. And with Arcega-Whiteside, I look, if they had a 2 on him, okay, still, but if they had a 2 on him, it clearly was wrong. You know what I mean, in terms of the value?
Well, then you got an evaluation issue.
Right. I don't see the problems. I don't know what the grade was. If they had, I don't even have the thing in front of me. I would love to know the real story with that pick. I would really love to know the real story.
There you go.
It just doesn't add up to me.
Nope.
It just doesn't add, because I remember when it was picked, you and I said, okay, at least he'll help them early on in the red zone, because he's tall, 6'2", could go get it. We've gotten the exact opposite, unfortunately.
Yeah, he is not. Although he did make a nice catch against.
That was. He had a great catch. Was it Detroit last year? Someone, I don't know who that was against. But come on, man, this has been ridiculous. He's got to do way better. Anyway.
All right, we want to get into this meeting and all the topics that we have to get through.
Sure.
Want to talk about that first. Of course, download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use that promo code ITB to get all your sign-up bonuses. That's promo code ITB to get all your sign-up bonuses only at DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, so I set it up already. There was, Tuesday, there was a meeting sometime in the afternoon, Jeffrey Lurie's place, Doug Pederson.
Oh, it was at Jeff's house.
Lurie,
okay. Makes sense.
As I understand, it was at Jeffrey's place. Yeah, Howie, right. I'm sure, was there.
Tuesday at Jeffrey's. Okay.
Yeah, right. It's a great movie. Doug's going to be coaching this year, but it's really just a puppeteer, and he's just,
oh, geez, come on.
I'm just messing around. Adam, there's a lot of things though. Like we set up in our last podcast, we talked about how, the offensive coaching staff and what's going to be asked for and what's going to be agreed to is going to be a big topic, and I'm sure it is. But I mean, there's it's not just the offensive coaching staff. I mean, there's a lot. It's my understanding there's at least 6 or 7 coaches whose fates are kind of hanging in the balance here, and that extends to defense and special teams as well.
Yep. In my sort of gathering intel of what we're expecting to learn over a series of days and weeks, the offensive issues are not limited to the quarterback situation. I think people know that, but it's involved in it because the quarterback's the one who's throwing the football. But just the play design, we had the scoop. The owner, I think it was after the Dallas game, Geoff. The owner was super pissed off about how they only scored 15 points.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the offensive coaches, were the ones that he explained that he was not happy with. About the Inquirer story, which is wow, that Jeffrey was at practice, he left. I'm assuming Jeff McClain's story was correct. I have no reason to think it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's very damning though if the owner leaves practice in disgust. I remember reading, I'm like, this is not good for these coaches.
Nope.
And Jeff was the one last year, he was correct, that said Mike Rowe was in trouble. And he put that out in November.
Right.
It turned out to be true. So he's obviously got good sources in the building. So Jeffrey and Roseman and Pederson, and I know Doug will have his view, obviously, because this is when you have discussions about what happened, that things that are negative, everybody has their opinion. And they're going to have to come to some resolution about what you're going to do about it. And the owner will never let this happen again. Obviously, a 4-11 team, 4-11-1.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of record. So lack of scoring, lack of player development. This is another one that someone gave me, which I listed. I asked a pretty good source. I said, hey, what do you think of Philly's roster? What do you think of the issues when you watch them? He goes, how many good players do you have on this football team? So I opened up my R lads as he was talking. This guy was driving. And I'm looking, and I know our people on our message board, I chimed in on a couple of these discussions, but this guy actually brought this up. I said, what do you see with his football team? He said, lack of player development. It's obvious. Because how many blue chippers they have on the team? I'm like, well, Wentz was a stud, but he's not anymore. And we went through it. There's just not a lot.
No.
And this plays into the draft. What is the plan, the offseason plan to develop, redevelop, quite frankly, this roster? Right. And as you said, the coaches, who's going to be held responsible for this? Obviously, the head coach is the ultimate guy because he manages them. But you're talking 6 or 7 coaches. That's a lot right there.
Yeah, that is. I mean, and all right. So let me toss this out at you because I've been wrestling with this for the last 2 days, and I still don't think I quite understand the dynamic going on. Right? We've talked about the idea that in this meeting, there's probably going to be conversation about bringing in a stronger offensive coach. Okay. And that might mean other guys lose their jobs. Yeah. All right. So if Jeffrey Lurie feels that this team needs a stronger offensive coach to fix the quarterback, then what I'm essentially getting out of this is that the team feels that Doug Pederson's offense is fine. Doug's going to come back and be the head coach, and he's going to run the same offense because he has not changed his offense in 4 years. And it's just going to be better because Carson Wentz is going to be coached better. Is that, am I to make that? What other interpretation would I make?
No, that would,
if you're keeping Doug Pederson, right, and who has been outspoken about his voice, his offense, then he's running his offense.
Yeah, look, if you're bringing in a stronger voice, it's more to manage the quarterbacks because Press Taylor clearly has not gone through to the guy to Wentz. And by the way, I've talked to some scouting sources on Jalen Hurts. He's another type A like Wentz. I'm not saying he doesn't listen. I'm just saying he's a strong personality.
Well, most
he's not low key. Believe me, he may sound it, but he's a very confident guy.
Right.
So to me,
I think most good quarterbacks are.
Yes,
that's good.
Well,
yeah.
Look, no, well, listen. Some guys are calmer, or maybe personality's different, but he's a pretty strong personality. He's more stronger than maybe the fans understand or people understand.
Okay.
So I just don't think you could go for. In fact, I know you can't go forward with the same alignment of coaches. That's not happening. We know that.
Right.
But the question is, what is Doug's view of this? What is his way of solving this issue?
And that's where I'm stuck on what this is all about, because Doug has been very adamant on saying I want there to be less voices, which was kind of, to me, his way of saying that this whole firing Mike and bringing in all these ideas guys was not working. You heard Carson allude to that during the year. In a way, he said that there's a lot of ideas there. So I took that as him recognizing that there's a lot of coaches that he's got to answer to. And then Doug pretty much said the same thing. He said, I want there to be one voice. Okay, it's your voice. But Adam, we've spent all year long critiquing Doug Peterson's play calling and his offensive concepts and how some good opponents have said that there's some predictability there. So even if they fix Carson Wentz and he gets to play at a pretty good level, it's still the same offense, right? I mean, am I to think that all of a sudden, okay, Carson Wentz is better, now they're going to be back to an 11, 12, 13 win team? Or at least an offense that's going to score 30 points a game and control the ball.
Yeah, I know. It's very complex bringing a coach in because you have to understand what his responsibilities are. So I'm going to go back to what you just said about Peterson's comment from his January 1st press conference. So he's asked by Rob Motti from the Associated Press about the different voices, and sometimes it's understand all the ideas and to try to decipher who you want to listen to and not listen to or whatever. Doug responds, everybody has great ideas. That's part of putting plans together. But by the end of the day, quote, I want to make sure that there's one voice, and that's my voice. That's heard offensively and nobody else's. That's the part I've got to get across to the staff, and I've done that. I want to make sure that there's one voice talking. The quarterbacks, whoever's in the room. Press Taylor has been in that room. Andrew Briner has been in that room. They're speaking the same language. They're all on the same page. I think that's very important at every position. I want Stout to run the offensive line, even though he's got TJ Pagnetti and Justin Peel helping the run game, and Maurice Devan, who's the assistant O-line coach.
And Deuce, right? Doesn't Deuce help out in the
right?
run
Deuce,
game?
right? Yeah, Deuce, he says there too, right? And Deuce, so you got a bunch of guys. But by the way, Deuce and Stout designed the run game. Okay, their Super Bowl year, as I understand it, Deuce would handle the rotations, and Stout would help design it. Here's the thing, though. You either want one voice, as Doug's saying, or you're going to have a lot of them. Or with the quarterback coach, okay, in 16 or 17, Dave Filippo was the only voice in there. As I understand it, Reich and Pederson would sit in the meetings. A couple of people told me, okay, but Dave Filippo was the one who was speaking. He was the one that Carson would hear every day, and that was the guy he would really report to. So I'm assuming it's the same structure. Press Taylor, although he was really the offensive quality control coaches. He might have had the title of assistant quarterbacks coach, but that's not what he did. He was basically a research guy. He was really not a quarterbacks coach, but now he's running the room. So Doug has to understand that it did not work. So whose voice is going to be in there?
Yeah. So maybe it goes back to something like 2019, where they had Mike Groh, who was the offensive coordinator, but it's Doug's offense. Doug calls the plays. But that offense, in Jeffrey Lurie's mind, wasn't good enough because he fired Mike Groh. And we detailed that offense was better than people thought. It was third, and situationally, it was third on in the red zone and fourth on third down. So top five.
Right. They closed the regular season really well. This final four games, I know, was against bad opponents or whatever you want to call it, folks.
Yeah.
But they also were dressing guys who were on the street. It was really remarkable how they turned it around. But anyway, moving forward here, I just think that I don't think Pederson quite understands what sometimes I don't think he understands what he's saying. If you only want one voice, get someone who could reach the players, okay? Get someone who could reach the quarterbacks, because they clearly, his plan did not work, okay? This is not a secret. Anyone who's analyzed the team knows this.
Yeah,
So
it almost sounds like Doug, by the way, is saying, I'd rather be the offensive coordinator than the head coach. When you're the head coach, you have to assert yourself on the entire team. You've got to be able to address the defense if it needs to be defense. You have to be able to get in the quarterback's ear a little bit if he's not doing something right, and you're
manage
a quarterback.
Your job is to manage your players and your coaches.
Right.
This is the problem I have with this guy. But guys won a lot of games, but they're at a crossroads here. Total crossroads.
So I'm not sure I understand what they're all looking for is basically what I'm saying. I don't. And plus, what about Carson? What if he's not coming back? Then what?
Well, that's obviously, I'm sure that's in this discussion, because as it was explained to me in recent weeks, you can't get into heavy lifting with coaches until the season's over. You just can't, because they're just coaching, even though they knew they weren't going to the playoffs, but they're trying to get a game plan together. You can't focus on two major issues or one major issue when you're trying to coach your football team. So this is what, as he was talking about, Pederson was asked on that January 1st situation, what's your time plan with meeting with Jeffrey? He goes, it's typical Monday, the day after the season, clean out day, exit interviews, and the next day, which is Tuesday. In this case, it's Tuesday, he would meet, and that's exactly what happened. So the only question is, because again, we talked about the offensive issues, the quarterback situation. Now, what they may do, okay, I'm going to add this into it. I'm not saying it's happening. But if all three parties, the head coach, the general manager, and the owner, want Wentz out of there, well, they might have started the ball here. Hey, listen, let's call. Obviously, they don't have to do it now, but once you get in February and get closer to the combine, let's get Chris Ballard on the phone, the GM there. Just feel him out,
Yep.
Although, because it's out there, people are speculating that the Colts would be interested. I'm sure the Bears would be interested. My understanding is Ryan Pace, the GM of the Bears, is really high on Carson Wentz for that draft.
Oh, okay.
This is the 16 draft, not the 17 draft where he drafted Trubisky.
Yeah.
Don't know if he would have drafted him had he been there. They weren't picking anywhere close to 2 anyway, so it wouldn't matter. I just know for a fact. I heard this a couple years ago that he was definitely very high on him. So I haven't forgotten about that. Of course, I didn't think it would mean anything, but now I'm thinking, okay, if they're going to want to trade him, that's another team they should be talking to. The Colts is obvious, the connection with Reich, and then Ryan Pace, like him, that D. Filippo guys there. So
yeah, and the Jets would probably be
Joe Douglas is an obvious one. Right. Well, now that's obvious. They got to make a decision on Sam Darnold's 5th-year option. Remember, Joe Douglas did not draft Sam Darnold, so he has no allegiance to him. And then the other thing is, this plays in the Press Taylor decision, and their other coaches. Who are they going to add and who are they going to subtract? The defensive coordinator, obviously. They got to look at their in-house candidates. Marquand Manuel, who's been a D coordinator before with the Falcons for 1 year, and Matt Burke is a protege of Jim Schwartz. As I noted on our show Sunday morning, as I understand it, they're not married to the wide nine. It's not like they wouldn't run it again, but they're open to whatever Doug wants. If Doug wants to change up the scheme, okay, because remember, when he technically hired Jim Schwartz was recommended to him. Let's call it like it is. It's what happened. He didn't know Jim. It was his call in the end whether he wanted to hire him or not, and he did.
Right.
He didn't know much about him. He knew he ran the wide nine, but you and I pointed out the numbers. In the end, they usually work. The numbers, the turnover numbers are a joke. They're always bad. Relatively bad. But when you look at DVOA and certain key NFL statistics, they're generally around top 10.
Right.
So it can work. Now, obviously, the philosophy is not creating turnovers, not pre-snap disguise. And I'd love to know what Pederson's thought process or thoughts are on the lack of turnovers. Because to me, that's can't happen. That's unacceptable to me. So one issue I really have, other than the lack of pre-snap disguise, and by the way, they're tied together, is the lack of turnovers.
So I would expect that both Matt Burke and Marquand Manuel will at least get interviews for the defensive coordinator job because they've been defensive coordinators before and because they may want to keep some consistency. I don't think you'll see Matt Burke return as a defensive line coach, though. He did that because Jim Schwartz was the defensive coordinator.
Yes.
They had worked together. It's my understanding he's not going to be a defensive line coach only without Jim Schwartz being there.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, because now I would tell you
that's not his pedigree. He's more linebackers.
What I do believe will happen, I mentioned this on our Sunday show, but now we have more time. I can explain a little better. Mm-hmm. So if Burke is the D coordinator, talking to a couple of people on it, they think Jeremiah Washburn would be the D-line coach. Because remember, Geoff, as I understand it, he's, I guess his title, what is defensive assistant? As I understand, he's been helping the defensive line.
Yeah.
So it makes, he's never coached the defensive line before. So he's an offensive line guy. But I mean, it's hard to argue with the number. What's his dad? Yes. Yes. Maybe learn from his dad, the wide nine. Obviously, he's the father of the wide nine, where Jim and where Jim Schwartz learned it, obviously. But that's a fascinating one. We'll see what happens there. Now, the other one, which we haven't talked very much, because Dave Fipp, for many years, is known as one of the best special teams coaches. Now, they had a major regression this year. Punt returns with Greg Faircatch Ward. You've got, I don't know why the hell Jalen Reagor wasn't on there, and I don't want to hear that he was hurt. He was healthy late. I know you and I have debated this one. I'm not buying that Jalen Reagor shouldn't have been back there. I think it's nonsense. The guy was special as a returner last year. The guy should have been back there. The guy's a game changer as a punt returner. Come on, man.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. Yeah. I was just saying that they don't typically do it with starters, but I agree. He could have.
You're right. But you know what? As I said, Steve Smith is the Pro Bowl returner. And it's,
if you got a weapon, you can use it. I agree. Use it.
Come on, man. Yeah, it's not like Deshaun did. Deshaun did it all the time. We know he had an injury history, but he definitely returned punts.
Right.
I mean, you would think if you're going to draft that guy in the first round, that would be part of it. But let's move this along here with Dave Fipp. So, for years, he was a pretty damn good special teams coach. It's not like he got bad all of a sudden, but they had a bad year.
They did. I mean, he also is when you're using special teamers as starters, like Grillin Arnold and Rudy Ford and Travis Fuller, all these guys who were bottom roster players that had to start, then of course that's going to impact your special teams. I mean, you're using guys who are
I get it. They had they had a ton of injuries, and Fipp talked about it, about having to use a lot of backups on it. I give him credit though. He took responsibility. He goes, look, this is not good enough. It's on me. Mm-hmm. But look, we'll see what happens here.
The kicker is broken though. I mean, the kicker missed a lot of kicks. Yeah.
The kicker's regressed. Mm-hmm. Cam Johnson's really good, but good
punter.
I don't know if this is his best year. I'd have to look at the numbers, but nevertheless, this is good. We'll see here. I'm not saying he's coming back, definitely, but or gone. I don't know. I just feel like this is going to be a discussion in their meeting that they would have had. And the last one for me, because it's on their front burner, and they already got started on the plan to reduce salary cap issues, which are something we've talked about for like 9 months. And then you've got, they got started on the very unique. I don't have the details yet. They're not out there. They're just, there were a couple of reports that are correct on Malik Jackson's. And I don't see the problem is Alshon's unique restructure. Mm-hmm. I've had it explained to me, but until I have the numbers in front of me, I'm not gonna bore people. But I know a lot of our listeners love that stuff. When I get the complete details, I'm going to not only give you the numbers, I'm going to explain to you what they mean and how they did it.
Okay.
But listen, what they're doing here is they're using every means necessary to not only get under the cap, but to somehow make this work. Although I do believe the cap will not be 175. I would be almost shocked if it happened to be, based on the talks with an NFLPA source last week. Now, look. No one knows for sure what it's going to be, whether it's 175, 185. The word I'd heard, it should be higher than 175 million. It's certainly not going to be 198.
Right.
198 too. But nevertheless, the Eagles have a major issue, but they did some very unique accounting, which is totally legal under the salary cap rules. Sure. Once I get the complete details, we'll devote like 10 to 15 minutes on it because it's fascinating what they did. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen I read it. I read it briefly. It's pretty interesting. Over the cap, the guy who runs that website did a nice job. But as he said, he doesn't know. He doesn't know for sure what they did. But he goes, here's a possibility, and it's all about the post June 1 stuff, which we've talked about. And I think we talked about this before. What you have to do is you have to carry the damn salary cap number to June 1st.
Yeah,
which was a compromise.
But you have to be compliant by March something. So you have
it's March 17th, But when you do post June 1, you have to carry the salary cap number,
right?
The full salary cap number through June 1st, and June 2nd, you half it.
Right.
You split it over, you split over 2 seasons, but that was a compromise that the NFL and NFLPA, when they had this agreement a couple of CBAs ago, because they wanted the PA, as they explained it to me years ago, they wanted a way to get teams, if you're not going to carry our players, could you cut them now instead of waiting? So they had a compromise. They gave them, in the last CBA, and they're still doing it, they gave them 2 post-June 1 designations. But they're not going to give them like 10 because they don't want anyone bastardizing the thing and taking advantage of it.
Right.
But once we get the full terms, we'll explain it. It's kind of fun. And we did that off-season show last year where we went over every contract that had dummy years. It's really unbelievable what they've done here with the dummy years. It's salary cap accounting. You're kicking the can down the road for players who are not going to be on your roster. But you're doing it in such a way the cap hit per season won't be big. You're still spreading it out, but these guys won't be on the roster.
There you go. All right. I want to finish up with one more point. First, I want to remind people, support for Inside the Birds is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. And they've got big news. They've released their new cologne scent to help you feel good and smell good all over at all times. I mean, who knew smelling this good could feel this good too? All right. Everyone knows Manscaped's got the perfect package 3.0 for all your below-the-waist grooming needs. But they didn't stop there. Complete your grooming game with the new refined cologne signature scent by Manscaped. With that same signature scent that's in all Manscaped formulas, the cologne's the perfect complement to the collection. It's light, approachable, gentlemanly in all the right ways. Think of it as your wingman for the night to keep you fresh and ready for anything. Calming and inviting, the signature scent introduces a light citrus burst before settling into the anchoring notes of vetiver and a woodsy masculine finish. This 50 milliliter spray cologne is even hypoallergenic, cruelty-free, dye-free, paraben-free, and 100% vegan. And the beautifully designed glass bottle makes a statement. The manly scent is attractive to set the mood. Also, be sure to check out the Perfect Package 3.0 with all the essentials for your below-the-waist grooming needs, including the Lawnmower 3.0 trimmer and crop formulations. Yeah, I'm talking about the ball deodorant and toner that keep your testes as your besties. All right, now you can use the new Manscaped Refined Cologne to complete your set and smell great anytime, anywhere. It's 2021. It's time to feel sexy. So get 20% off and free shipping. Use that promo code ITB at manscaped.com. Your balls and your body will thank you. That's 20% off and free shipping using the code ITB at manscaped.com. 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using ITB. Look good, smell good, feel good with Manscaped. All right. Let me finish this off, this big picture conversation that we've had on this. The Carson Wentz status is very much hovering over this and up in the air.
It's the number one issue. Yeah, no doubt.
Sure. If he's not going to be part of the team, why would Doug continue to be the head coach? I mean, if he's not part of the team, if Carson Wentz says, I want out, it's because Carson believes Doug broke him, right? I mean, am I wrong on that?
Well, I'm look, Chris Mortensen was the one who put the story out Sunday morning. I work with him for 4.5 years. When he puts something out like that, it's true. I guarantee it's true.
Okay, so if Doug's responsible for this, why would, if you're Jeffrey Lurie and you're
no, here's a question though. I didn't see. I read the story on ESPN.com. I didn't see I didn't see the reasons outlined why what he's got an issue with Doug.
I didn't either. It said fractured relationship. It wasn't very specific on what led to the fracture.
Right. Well, I mean, we could all guess some.
But I mean, does it even matter? I mean, the quarterback's broken, right? We both agree. The quarterback's broken. Yes. Doug Pederson is the head coach of the team, and because he's a quarterback, also he plays probably the biggest role in that. Correct?
Yep.
So if you're Jeffrey Lurie and you just lost your franchise quarterback that you signed to $1 billion, you don't blame that on your head coach at all? Like, I don't. Again, this goes back to I don't understand what's going on here.
Yeah, as I said many times, and I said it last week, as a matter of fact, I said, are you going to trust the same process, this head coach who oversaw the regression of your $32 million a year starting quarterback and your $2 million a year number 2 quarterback who had not been active since week 1? I mean, you're going to trust this guy to do this? And he was the one who wanted Press Taylor to be the quarterback's coach? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey. But more power to you. You're gonna. What's that definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah,
that's what you got.
I just don't. There's a lot going on right now that we're hearing, and I just don't understand. And I think other people are confused too. They look at the situation and they say, "I don't know what's going on here." Where's the accountability? You got a very rare situation where a guy that you just signed to a really long-term deal that you loved as your franchise quarterback is now pissed potentially beyond repair. And maybe he didn't feel supported. Maybe he just didn't like what the head coach did. I don't even care what the reasons are. It's just a rare situation, and you can't have that happen. I
hear you. And also, it's not just the head coach. It's that story that comes out from NFL.com, Michael Silver, who unnamed, anonymous source, questioned Carson's practice habits. And then Carson's got to be asked about it.
Right.
I mean, what kind of support is that? Michael did his job. I got no problem with it. I would have done the same thing.
No, that's a great point.
It's a great scoop. Listen, if you get someone who I'm sure it's a good source, Mike's a great reporter. I got no problem with it. I would have done the same thing. If someone gives me the stuff, I'm putting it out there. But here's the thing. I would tell whoever that source was, what are you doing to your star quarterback?
Right.
And then, it was the issue with the players. And the thing is, though, and I don't know Carson Wentz, but if I happen to be Carson Wentz, I want to know how my head coach is protecting me. What's he doing to support me?
Yeah.
And why don't you be defiant? Like, I remember one thing, and as much as I love Andy Reid, it always bothered me when the T.O. and Donovan stuff, I never totally heard him back Donovan and say, T.O.'s wrong. This is nonsense. We're going to take care of this. It's not going to happen again. Like, Bill Belichick ain't putting up with it. I want to, this kid, 11, as you just talked about, okay? $32 million a year. What are you doing? What are you doing to protect your starting quarterback so this shit doesn't get out?
Yeah. I agree with you. I just think that this is a very strange situation. You
and I have outlined how bad he's been this season. It's not a secret. He should have been benched before he was benched. Okay.
Yeah.
People want us to be critical. We keep getting more critical of the quarterback, but I'm trying to call it down the middle here. I'm trying to be fair and gather information like you and I have done all season and try to come up with something. Why? Okay, more stories out there. Why is Carson pissed off? I'm trying to be, because he's a human being. He's a 28-year-old person who's in this unbelievable media market and tough fans, great fans though, but people want answers. Why is he so pissed off at Doug? And it's also an organizational issue. What have you done to support your quarterback?
Yeah. There's a whole lot of issues going on here, and I don't know how they're all solvable. And we'll see. Again, where's the accountability if everybody comes back, or if there's just
well, we're going to learn over the next 2 or 3 days, whether you and I report it like we have the last 2 or 3 years, who's been fired and all that stuff. It's always tough to put those stories out, but it's our job. If we get them and we put it out, we'll find out why.
Right.
When we did the Gunnar Brewer and Chris Wilson, that was our first year in 18, right? I think.
I believe so. Yeah, 2018.
Yeah, and we outlined, we explained why Gunnar Brewer was not brought back. We explained why Chris Wilson. Yep. Yeah. The Mike Gross stuff we explained. Who was the other guy? Oh, the kid, Carson Walsh.
Yeah.
It's a year ago. But look, something's going to change. We know Jeff Lurie's not going to stand for it. And Doug, the one before we get out of here, I'm hoping that Doug was accountable here, and he's got to stop trying to protect his coaches. He's got to be honest, and he's got to do a better job, as we've now said for 3 years.
Yes.
Our biggest criticism is not changed. He doesn't coach his coaches well.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I'm not trying to be the Pied Piper of leading Doug out of town. I just don't understand the dynamic. That's all I'm trying to say. I don't understand what the owner wants. The conversation, what the owner wants, and the result of, if you lose a franchise quarterback, it happened and nothing. There's nobody to blame for this. I'm like, you know what I'm saying?
But listen, hang on here, Geoff. You know what happened last year? The offensive coordinator and the receiver coach, the owner told Pederson that they're out.
Right.
It's been very, very well detailed by us, by the Inquirer.
Right. That's where I didn't articulate. Okay, this is not an owner's job in the NFL. Agree.
But this is
not for an owner to do. So that's my point. If the owner feels that he's got to do this, then he's got the wrong guy.
I got it.
This is not an owner's job.
Listen, I don't advocate for people getting fired. It's not my job. I'm never going to do it. I don't give a shit if it's win or lose. But as someone who loves the game, as you and I do, it does bother me that it gets to the ownership level. You never let it get out, as you just said, and you're very passionate about it. And I agree with you. Why the hell does it keep going to the owner's level? Why does he feel like he's got to get involved?
Yes. Right. If you, as an owner, feel that your head coach doesn't do the right job of bringing in coaches and coaching coaches, well, then the problem is then with the head coach then. Now, maybe Jeffrey's wrong about it. I don't care. That's not my business. My point is to look at it objectively and say, you keep giving this guy new coaches and it's getting worse. And at what point do you say to yourself, well, maybe I shouldn't be the one making this decision. I should just get better people in charge. That's all. So we'll end it with that.
I hear you. And, honestly, Jeffrey Lurie needs to look at himself here. His involvement of it, is it healthy? It's one thing I've actually, now that you brought this up, I'll address before we get out of here. Mm-hmm. Is it healthy for him being involved? How does he help the process? I understand Joe Banner was on our show, explained to me how Jeffrey's very thoughtful and he asks a lot of questions, which he should do. Listen, if he's going to be the guy who's spearheading these end of the season meetings, and by the way, a lot of head coaches meet with their owner. I understand that. But if he's asking the right questions, I can't imagine what his answers he's going to get from Doug Pederson. I just can't imagine what kind of answers and responses he's going to get. What can he possibly say? How can he possibly defend the way the quarterback's been coached this season? Are you kidding me?
I don't know. And I agree. I'm glad you put it that way because I'm trying to bring Jeffrey's decision-making into this conversation and say clearly there's been something strange about this as well.
And listen, when it's reported that the owner's pissed off or the owner has let coaches know he's not happy, and if you're a head coach and you know about this, what are you doing to not only resolve this, to make sure this doesn't happen again? This is my problem with Pederson. It's like he's talking about one voice. Which, by the way, when he said that last week, and we were reading the quotes earlier here, that clearly tells me that he feels like he didn't want this. Okay?
I agree.
I mean, can't speak for him, but I'm just trying to read in a little of these quotes because you don't say something like that unless you're trying to put a message out there. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think that was very pointed comment, and that's why I say I don't understand. I feel like there's at least two entities that are at odds here philosophically, and yet it seems like, well, we'll have to see. We have to see what the result of the meeting is. We'll have more answers then, and you and I.
Good discussion, my friend. In fact,
good discussion.
I would have loved to have been there because I would love to be like a mediator. Because listen, this I got to, and again, I don't know, but I'm thinking if I own this football team and we had a shit season for 11-1, I'm coming in. And I'm sure he's expressed, Lurie's expresses his feelings on the season to as it was going along to Pederson. But now that the season's over, now you can take the gloves off and really have thoughtful, deep discussions. It may get heated. I would just love to know what Doug's responses are, and what is Howie is Roseman the mediator? Who the hell knows?
Oh my God!
But what. I would just love to know. It's just fascinating. Because remember what Banner said on Inside the Birds. We asked him this. What are these discussions like? And he goes, "We all have to look at." He goes, "The key is to be honest, to take responsibility." He goes, "Look, it surprised me when he said that. I was very surprised that they all had to look at." He said, "We all had to look at ourselves in the mirror and come up with why it didn't work, and be honest and not be defensive." Whatever it was he said, but it did surprise me when he said that. So we'll see what happens.
They're all doing that. Definitely. Yes. All right, we'll be back Friday morning with hopefully a little bit more news from NovaCare that we can talk about. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. Want to thank our producer Hunter Brody. He's got a great YouTube channel. It's called Sports Talk with Broads. Check it out. Also check him on his Twitter account @Broads81. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.